We're here with Gena Dirani. Jenna is the managing director at Salus GRC, a compliance consulting firm that offers a full range of solutions to support the compliance function for SEC registered investment advisors. Jenna is an attorney by trade and has worked in the compliance space for nearly 10 years, with a current focus on compliance for digital asset managers. Jenna is also a frequent guest of the show. Welcome back, Jenna. Great to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Great time to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, exciting time for sure. Um, we've obviously just went through an election. Trump stepped into office a couple days back. What's the latest? Give us, in terms of SEC's crypto focus for 2025.
Yeah. So, 2025, I think we're going to see increased focus, around hopefully some clarity around crypto regulation. Crypto was named as an SEC exam priority. The new administration is expected to be more crypto friendly. We're hoping to see a bit of regulation around stable coins, some clarity around staking, and we can talk about each one of those things a little bit more in detail. But overall, it seems like 2025 is going to be a year where registered investment advisors with the SEC hopefully gain a bit more insight into what the regulatory requirements will be and what their compliance program requirements should look like in light of this. So, again, just to kind of kick it off, the Division of Examinations from the SEC again has named crypto as an examination focus in 2025. So, what we would expect the key focus areas for the SEC to be are, recommendations and advice. So, advisors have to conduct thorough due diligence on what they're recommending to clients, just like you would any other asset or any other investment. So, treat it the same way. We're expecting that registered investment advisors, of course, have to ensure that what they're recommending aligns with their clients' risk profiles and investment strategies. Fiduciary duty is always a concept that needs to be upheld, so putting the client's best interest first. Crypto is still considered, obviously, to be a highly volatile and speculative asset. So with that always comes disclosures. That's always going to be a focus. Trading practices, digital asset exchanges. The SEC is looking at signs of market manipulation, improper disclosures, insufficient investor protections, things like that. Custody, of course, always going to be a hot button issue in general and specifically around crypto. Crypto wallets are sort of a central feature of digital asset management. So the SEC expects firms to implement robust security measures, use things like multi-signature wallets, cold storage solutions, those more robust features that are available is something that we would want to see worked into compliance policies and procedures. And compliance programs in general, really should be updated to address blockchain risks like smart contract vulnerabilities, fraud prevention mechanisms, and cybersecurity, of course, is woven into all of that. Annual compliance audits are always essential when dealing with this asset class or any asset class. It's just part of advisors' compliance program rule requirements. But, these are the types of things that we would expect the SEC to really dig into and to look into if RIAs have considered them as well. And just a few days ago, the SEC announced the formation of a crypto task force, which basically, is going to be tasked with creating a more clear regulatory framework for crypto assets, clarifying registration requirements, improving disclosure standards, and hopefully focusing enforcement actions or enforcement efforts more judiciously. And the aim of this task force is to collaborate with Congress, other federal agencies, international regulators, while also engaging industry participants to hopefully strike that balance between investor protection and innovation. So that's a bit indicative of what we think we can expect under the new administration. And, with Paul Atkins as the new SEC chair, he's expected to introduce more business friendly policies and regulations, but still a regulated crypto environment. So even though we might have more clarity, more pro business stance or more crypto stance, it's not like we're going to see deregulation of the crypto industry. So registered investment advisors still have to uphold fiduciary duty to clients. You have to maintain a solid compliance program that really is bespoke to the digital asset offering. So I think that's sort of the emphasis for 2025. Legislative efforts of the Fit 21 Act, this shift in enforcement, pro-business policies, stablecoin regulation, more clarity around staking.
Yeah.
But again, fraud prevention is always going to be a focus, even in this more friendly environment. Fraud, Ponzi schemes, unregistered offerings,
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
the perennial focus
100%.
of investor harm.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting to see obviously the change, right? We've been talking about this for a while, for many years in the U.S. Obviously, the past of regulation by enforcement was not fun for anybody, and now we're moving into a new paradigm, which is fantastic. I'm curious, you mentioned kind of unpacking a couple of the different topics here, Jenna. One being regulation of stablecoins. What is nuances with stablecoins that you're seeing or potential?
Yeah, so they're sort of at the center of the crypto regulatory debate because of their potential use in global trade, payments, and as a stored value. Digital asset stablecoins are digital assets pegged to traditional currencies like the US dollar. And there's this Clarity for Payment Stablecoins Act, that's expected to sort of establish a licensing regime for stablecoin issuers. And their legislation will likely require issuers to maintain sufficient reserves and undergo regular audits. And basically, what this means for registered investment advisors is any involvement with stablecoins, whether it's through investment funds or payment systems, it's going to require careful vetting, proper disclosures, and really vetting out the uses and the risks of stablecoins and ensuring that those are addressed in your policies and procedures, in your fund documents, in your regulatory documents, in your Form ADVs. So that's the impact that we're expecting it to have on registered investment advisors.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Obviously, this is playing out in real time, so I'll probably will know more in the coming weeks and months as some of this stuff gets kicked off. And obviously, to your point, it's coming your way, Jenna, from everybody's asking you, hey, what to do here. But going back to the disclosures, is there any specific disclosures relative to stablecoins that may be, pertinent or looking at that has a question on that?
Yeah, I think one disclosure to keep in mind in general on your Form ADV is sort of just the uncertainty of asset classification at this point, because if certain assets are classified in a different or an unexpected way, this may impact an investment strategy. This may impact returns. So, there may be a risk of loss depending on the change in regulatory expectation or regulatory requirements around different assets. So I think in general, just sort of the evolving regulatory landscape of the digital asset industry is something that should be well thought out in fund documents and disclosures like an advisor's ADV.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot here. Obviously, it was exciting to see kind of the change and getting some more regulatory clarity, but there's a lot to unpack here. I don't know what you're hearing from your clients, and where do you start, right? Almost, there's so many things to unpack. Obviously, disclosures are important.
Mm-hmm.
From an RA perspective, like you said. What are some other questions that you get asked from your clients based on kind of where things are at today? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions that come up around staking also, because this is another sort of regulatory hot topic. The SEC seems to be scrutinizing staking services under the Howey test that we are all familiar with, and basically, determining whether or not staking services qualify as an investment contract, which means that it would fall under the definition of a security. So again, if staking services are investment contracts and fall under the definition of a security, then that means platforms offering them have to register with the SEC, and comply with disclosure requirements. They have ongoing reporting obligations. Like, this would really add significant operational complexity, especially for smaller providers. And this could result in smaller providers leaving the market, due to increased compliance costs. And also this could affect staking awards, that are distributed to investors or part of an advisor strategy. So, there's a lot of sort of movement around that as well. So when it comes to, staking for investment advisors, it really presents a unique opportunity to diversify portfolios and offer clients exposure to, this really exciting aspect of blockchain technology. But it means that RIAs also have to be prepared for conducting, thorough due diligence and vet staking platforms to make sure they meet compliance standards, have robust security protocols. RIAs have to understand the custodial arrangements and risks associated with staking, again, which takes me back to that sort of consistent emphasis on disclosure of risks specific to the types of bespoke concepts that are prevalent in the digital asset industry. So, you should have a whole risk disclosure around staking in general. Again, going back to preparing for a potential change in the asset classification that could impact the strategy, all of your disclosures should reflect these risks sort of accordingly.
Cool. Let's dig into the Fit 21 situation. Can you explain kind of what that is for our audience and kind of how it affects the marketplace?
Yeah, so we're expecting the Fit 21 Act will be prioritized in 2025 as well. It introduces significant regulatory changes and basically splits oversight between the SEC and the CFTC. So digital commodities like Bitcoin, which has already been established, are regulated by the CFTC, and then the Fit Act introduces restricted digital assets. So basically tokens resembling securities would be regulated by the SEC. So what this means for RIAs managing private funds is they have to identify the classification of each digital asset in their portfolio and comply with the relevant regulatory regime. So, the Act has this concept of decentralization certification, which basically means digital assets have to be submitted to the SEC for certification as sufficiently decentralized to qualify as a commodity. And so therefore, if the SEC certifies an asset as decentralized, it moves to CFTC oversight as opposed to SEC oversight. So, this just means that compliance programs are really going to have to adapt and track and respond to the changes in an asset's regulatory status, which could affect custody, reporting, marketing, disclosures, et cetera. So all that kind of stuff. So that's a really big concept of Fit 21. And then some other areas that it will impact in terms of regulation is it expands anti-money laundering requirements. So there's enhanced transaction monitoring requirements for fund activities like client onboarding and digital asset transfers, similar to what advisors already have to do now, but they should be conducting due diligence on custodians, administrators, platforms, et cetera, to ensure that those other third parties are complying with Banking Secrecy Act obligations. So that's something to keep in mind too, especially in light of the new anti-money laundering rule that's going to be effective as of January 2026. This is an extra layer for crypto advisors that requires consideration. Fit 21 also introduces more detailed custody requirements, so more enhanced transparency around custodial arrangements, stricter segregation of client assets. Interestingly, it also requires that advisors using self-custody solutions or non-qualified custodians to disclose these arrangements clearly to investors and justify why they are appropriate. Because again, the qualified custodian with the big Q is the preference for custody arrangements. So if you're kind of not using a qualified custodian, that has to be articulated in policies and procedures and justified a bit.
As a follow-on question on service providers, I think it was interesting. You said obviously the disclosures and things and due diligence that will need to be done, more heightened due diligence, which is probably not done today, right? Or maybe at a certain level, but now that's going to be even more in depth, shall we say, for fund administrators, other services that are in the space.
Yeah, I mean, initial and ongoing due diligence is always something that the SEC expects to see from registered investment advisors. But now when you're layering in more enhanced AML KYC requirements, which oftentimes RIAs rely on these other third parties to conduct or assist them with, the SEC will expect that you're diligencing these third parties to make sure their practices are sufficient for your compliance program. Because even though, RIAs may outsource some of these practices to those other third parties, they're still responsible for the oversight and ensuring that they're using good providers to sort of keep up with their regulatory compliance requirements. So, that's definitely something that's going to, I think, tie into the service providers that every registered investment advisor is using, especially the ones that maybe aren't as established or newer that are part of the crypto space. So that's definitely something.
Any specifics that people should be aware of with the AML KYC changes?
Yes. So there's a new rule that's coming out for all registered investment advisors in general that's going to require a more risk-based approach when it comes to uh, policies and procedures and how to screen different LPs or different counterparties that you're working with. So it's not just going to be as simple as ensuring somebody isn't on the OFAC list. The SEC is going to expect that you've delineated what qualifies somebody as low risk, medium risk, high risk, and once you've sort of created those different buckets, what are the different requirements and protocols that you're following to address sort of those varying risk levels. So that's something that the entire industry is going to need to take under consideration, but also again the unique aspects of it that exist in the digital asset space or world too. So, and that ties into more enhanced disclosures that are required under FIT 21 also. So, you know, the act is going to require that ADV filings are updated to reflect how digital assets are classified and how the compliance frameworks used for each category fit with that. Advisors are going to have to ensure compliance with both SEC and CFTC requirements, again, including AML KYC practices, custody arrangements, things like that. And also, marketing requirements also are going to be impacted. This act will influence how RIAs can market digital asset funds and report performance. So, for example, marketing materials have to specify whether assets are classified as commodities, restricted digital assets, stable coins, et cetera, and different disclosures and clear disclosures about each of the applicable regulatory frameworks that depend on the classification. So we're expecting to see this again be prioritized in 2025, so it could pass, but we could also see delays due to pushback from the SEC. We're seeing sort of separate but related Coinbase sort of evolve continually with pushback from the SEC.
We have another one that's probably becoming a hot topic right now, meme coins. So I don't know how much you get into this, but like obviously Trump just launched his coin. I saw his wife did as well. Yeah. What's the latest on that? Because it's kind of funny. A couple months back, I know like Hawk Tua had her own coin, and people are talking about putting her in jail. What's the thought with Trump doing this?
Yeah, so I think just with meme coins in general, it's an area that's sort of ripe for market manipulation and sort of pump and dump schemes, and that's what the SEC is focused on in general when it comes to these types of assets. Is it really a meaningful investment, or is it just sort of a tool for market manipulation? So that's another thing that advisors have to keep in mind if this is something that they want to invest in. Is it really a sound investment? But also from sort of like a marketing perspective and social media perspective, the SEC is focused on what are employees of registered investment advisors saying about meme coins, on X or on different social media platforms, for example. RIAs don't want to get caught up in that sort of situation where it could be deemed sort of market manipulation in terms of the way these meme coins are being discussed on social media. So definitely an area that's met with a lot of scrutiny, especially when it comes to registered investment advisors.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So people should be thinking about their posts a little more thoroughly.
Yes. Basically anything that mentions a firm, the firm name should be treated like marketing material and go through compliance. That's the best way to handle it.
Basically, Mike needs to rethink his meme coin strategy before he drops that.
Yes.
I do.
Let's talk more about, you mentioned Coinbase developments, and maybe we can talk more about what you're seeing on that side of things.
Yeah. So this is, one of the most significant sort of ongoing developments in the crypto regulatory landscape. And basically, it's sort of a summary. The SEC denied Coinbase's petition for new rulemaking in December of 2023, and basically said that existing regulations were sufficient, and that the current framework isn't unworkable for the crypto sector. And Coinbase filed an appeal arguing that the SEC's approach sort of lacked transparency and was inconsistent with fostering innovation. And recently, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit remanded the matter, back to the SEC and basically said, you have to come up with a more substantive explanation for your position as to why, current regulatory frameworks are not unworkable for the crypto sector. So, this is a legal battle that's been ongoing. And I think some of the key takeaways from this are, the court's criticism of the SEC sort of underscores this need for clear crypto industry specific rules rather than relying on enforcement actions to regulate. And, this could set precedent and encourage other firms to sort of challenge the lack of clear guidance, which maybe will lead to a more collaborative regulatory environment. Binance, I think, just recently filed a joint notice off the back of this. So, this is hopefully a way that we're going to push forward with more regulatory clarity. But again, until the SEC provides that clarity, firms still have to ensure compliance with the existing rules and framework, even if they feel like they don't perfectly, match for crypto. Firms still have to take a proactive approach to compliance and do the best that they can under the existing framework. So, just to kind of put a bow on everything, I guess the compliance program rule under the Advisors Act sort of remains a cornerstone of registered investment advisor operations. But the rise of crypto and the demands and all of that will garner additional focus in 2025. And advisors really should continue to focus on ensuring their compliance policies and procedures reflect crypto specific policies and risks and are updated to address emerging regulatory requirements. Employee education is important. Training staff on these regulatory changes, focusing on this fiduciary duty obligation that exists for all registered investment advisors and the unique characteristics of crypto assets and how they overlay into advisors' fiduciary duties, and that the resulting obligations of employees of registered investment advisors. And also leverage technology. There are a lot of great tools out there that advisors can use. There are a lot of great third parties that advisors can use to sort of help them with the maintenance of their compliance program. And I think one of the key things that advisors should continue really focusing on is conducting risk assessments. Regularly evaluate the risks associated with crypto assets, including custody, market manipulation, classification challenges. Those are things that really are going to be at the forefront of an examiner's thoughts. So, make sure you do your annual compliance review every year and really put some meat into it and show a regulator that you've considered all of these different sort of bespoke challenges that the crypto industry faces. So, compliance isn't just a best practice, but it's a must for digital asset managers. So, leverage your compliance consultants. This is what we specialize in at Salus GRC.
Reach out to Jenna. Links in the description below.
Another question I get asked quite a bit still, and this may still be early too, as well, as far as we're in the throes of this real time, but the banking element of opening bank accounts for crypto funds, for RIAs who are associated with digital assets, that has been a problem, obviously, in the past, and we're hoping that maybe with the change in more regulatory clarity going forward, that may, may change going forward as well from a banking perspective. I don't know if you've had any conversations to this point or heard anything on that front, but I'm just curious.
I don't know if that's necessarily going to be driven by SEC regulation, for example,
Yeah.
rather than actual banking regs, but that's a good point. That's another, like, I'd love to sort of look into that more and see what the nexus is, because that's a bit more of like a less theoretical, more real world question.
Yeah, well, I think it goes to your point about more disclosure, more vetting of service providers, right? Which to a fund, a bank is one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how that nuance is happening. But on the other flip side, banks do the same thing and opening accounts as
Mm-hmm.
well, and that has always been a challenge. Where today, with many fund managers, they're opening multiple bank accounts at the same time, just to make sure they have another plan B, if you will, with the past issues of banks closing and all
Yeah.
that happens. So I was just curious.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing with clients is, I think the focus more is, which custodians are you using? Are they legit, or are they these really weird small ones that nobody's ever heard of before?
Right.
So that hasn't come up yet in terms of, well, how easy is it to open a bank account for crypto, and will that be impacted by changing regulation? I don't know. That's a good question though.
Yeah. Are there any other questions that your clients are kind of asking you? Obviously, it's early in the year; things are happening in real time. But anything else that's come up that's pretty interesting that maybe nobody thought of, and now we're kind of having to unpack the situation, so to speak? Or
Honestly, not so much yet. Everybody's just like, what does this mean? Is it going to be deregulated? And I'm like, no, it's not going to be deregulated. Like, issuing shares in a fund is what's the regulated activity, not the underlying asset. So even though it's like different digital assets may be classified as securities, commodities, or neither, still, if you're raising a fund and offering shares in a fund, like,
yeah,
that's why, sort of everybody's like, oh, it's going to be free for all. I'm like, no, it's just going to be regulated and clarified. But yeah,
which is what we all wanted,
so
anyways, right? That's been the ongoing. This, you can do anything you want situation of
yeah,
anybody. So
yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Those are like the high level things that people are asking about. What now with Coinbase? What about staking? What about stable coins?
Yeah,
What's
Yeah,
FIT going to
these are big
do?
things.
What do we expect under the new regulation or under the new administration?
yeah, DeFi,
Is the
right?
SEC still
Yeah,
focused? Yeah.
what's happening with DeFi and how that
Yeah.
translates.
Yeah.
Jenna, this has been a lot of fun. Where could people go to connect with you and learn more about
Yeah,
Salus?
absolutely. You can check out our website, Salus GRC, and we're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or check out the website.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Jenna. It's always great to have you on the show, and we'll make sure to include all that in the show notes there.